All right, folks, welcome to episode 42 of Biomassed. We have a pretty crisp show for you tonight. Crisp, by that I mean short, sweet, tart, to the point, lightning round like. We're under an incredible amount of pressure from one of the producers of the show to actually rein in the amount of rambling that we do. So, in true fashion of how the Dust Mercs have been responding to CCP, we're going to fight the power and we're going to go for an all-night episode. We're gonna try to hold on to this one for as long as we can. We're gonna be cycling guests in and out all night long, and see exactly how long we can drag this one out. So, with that, we're gonna dive right in and do some intros. Iron Wolf Saber.
Hello, I'm CP1 Iron Wolf Saber. I'm here to annoy and troll everyone.
No change to your normal method. Okay, excellent. Kane Spero.
Yes, former member of the CPM and leader of the Negative Feedback Alliance.
All right, Pokey.
Pokey Draven from OSG Planetary Operations and co-host here on Biomassed.
Yep, the artist formerly known as Pokey is now known as Comrade Draven because apparently he's destroyed his corp from within with his communistic behavior. So
it's the
proletariat is,
Yeah,
the proletariat is absolutely in uprise right now. So it's awesome. Soraya?
What's the tax rate on that?
Was the tax rate?
Like 5%, 10%? What?
I actually pushed it to 300%. I felt it was reasonable, but they disagreed.
I don't think the client will let you do that.
I have my ways.
That's impressive.
It's a lot of alt corps and various shenanigans and dev hacks.
Okay. So I'm Soraya Zell. I'm a member of CPM1 and co-host here on the show.
Outstanding. All right, and I'm Jason Larison. I'm also one of the co-hosts on the show, and I fly with Agony Unleashed on the Eve side, and I'm also a member of OSG Planetary Operations until I attempt to rise up and overthrow Pokey's boot that's on my neck with his incredibly invasive taxes and his diva-like demands on us. So, for the first thing we have, we're gonna tee this up. Soraya Zell was letting us know that he has a very extra special random topic that he was going to bring up randomly throughout this random show. So I thought I would randomly open this up and give him a window of time with which he could bring up his random topic.
No, I'm not going to do that. That wouldn't be very random.
No, it wouldn't. But it would be incredibly well flowing in your desire to have a short show tonight.
Nah. So, anyways, my thing that I did this week, there's no real CPM update this week because there was the Chinese New Year, and so things have been pretty quiet. I did go to a party this weekend, which for a social butterfly such as myself is not a frequent occurrence. I went to a goomp, which is a meet of goons, and there were about 70 goons there. Maybe 60 goons and like 10 people who weren't goons, like myself. I actually met with Cyan, who is one of the CSM members, and I talked to him a bit. So that was cool. That's the only thing the CPM did this week, as far as I know.
Well, did you see how many candidates CSM 10's going to have?
77 candidates, yeah.
It's fucking off the hook.
I think most of them don't matter.
Yeah, and...
But when does that start? The 25th is when the vote match is supposed to be up and
24th.
Voting?
24th.
24th, and then 25th is when voting opens then? Do you know?
I don't know. Maybe.
Because that'll be exciting. There's definitely... Hey, we could talk about that for a bit if you want.
Well, I will say this. I know, I mean, obviously, a large swath of those 77 folks are, relatively... either A, unknown, or B, not relevant. But the reality is that with 14 slots and this many different ways the vote is going to get split, it would really not surprise me if there's like some surprises of some people that get in those last 3 to 5 slots on people's ballots.
Oh, yeah, potentially. I mean, obviously, you're going to see goons will rally behind their usual thing, and they'll push through their candidates because, everyone votes goons properly. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely some incumbents I hope get reelected. I think Mike Azariah is great. I like sure Kyle's really great. Cyan's cool. So hopefully we'll get kind of a decent mix of new blood and veteran faces.
Yeah, I've been taking a look at the. I'm pretty.
Oh, and Steve
probably
Ronikin,
follow.
he's cool too.
Yeah, well, not only is he cool, but he's incredibly. There's not a lot of guys out there like Steve that do what he does with
Yes.
third-party
Yeah.
activities.
I felt bad because I started listing some of the people I hope get reelected, and I'm like, and then you started talking, and I'm like, crud, I didn't mention Steve.
No. Well, if you think about it, it's kind of interesting. I was actually having this discussion with a couple of the guys from Podside the other night. There's 14 people that get elected on the CSM, and there's probably on any given day really only 6 to 7, maybe really 5 to 7 that are actually engaged or actually doing anything. And then occasionally you might get some other ones,
Right.
that were, if it's something that they're very involved in from their niche, whatever that may be, where they might engage with CCP. But CCP Lilu, who manages the CSM, there's been a lot of drama over the CSM and things like that over the last few weeks. And she had a couple very interesting things to say that I thought were relevant to actually to how we look at the CPM. Her thought was interesting. She doesn't view them as like a group entity that performs like a collective function. She sees them more as how they involve themselves individually. And her statement was actually pretty telling in that she would much rather have 14 people that are consistently engaged in the process in different spots, but consistently engaged, and are she kind of referred to it as like 14 B plus people rather than having half of the CSM not engaged at all, but the ones that are engaged are high quality or whatever. It was an interesting statement, and I think it shows a lot about how the CSM is their role has been changing over time, and there's a lot of discussion about the actual CSM white paper getting changed.
And you're gonna have kind of your really superhero CSM, and then you're gonna have a few that everyone kind of hoped worked out and didn't, and that's why I think that it's a great opportunity when there are people running for re-election to not only put back in the people who've shown they are putting in the time, and then hopefully maybe swap out some of the less productive seats with people who are maybe just at that level as well.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. And there's a lot, of the people that are running. I think you listed the ones you just listed off are really the incumbents that are running, shy of like Xander Fina. So Cyan is running. Then you've got Mike. Let's see, Sugar, Steve Ronikin. Xander's running again.
I won't vote for Xander though.
Yeah, I didn't vote for him the first time. I mean, he runs a pretty good podcast and website, but I'm not sure that he's actually what he actually does in the process. And that's really, and then Steve Ronikin. So that's 5 out of the 7. I think Gorski Carr's running again. I don't know him very well, but he's real big in Pravi. I think Core Blood Brothers might be running again. He's another Pravi guy, I think. So, and reportedly they're pretty good folks. I don't know them. I've not met them or dealt with their voting blocks. There are some kind of newer guys, and what I found interesting, honestly, was the number of new players or players that have been playing a year or less that are interested in the CSM.
And that's very good.
I'll be honest with you. I've heard a lot of veterans in EVE, like the classic bitter vet, like fuck them, they don't know anything about the game, and if you haven't been playing 6 years, you don't really know. You're not worth it my time or something, or you're not a master's degree level specialist in something.
You need people who have a newer
absolutely.
view.
You need to have some people with a totally different perspective.
The game has to appeal to new players, which means the people who are coming just in have a lot of viewpoint of what they see is good and what isn't good with the game. That may or may not reflect the same as the veterans, but it's very important that more new player stuff was in there. I mean, I was as I said, I saw Cyan this weekend. Last week, CCP announced Opportunities, which is kind of their take on a little bit more open-ended tutorial system. You read that?
Yeah, I did.
And I told him, I mean, that's the sort of thing that I've been waiting to see CCP actually doing, is looking at the new player experience, how it doesn't reflect the game, and figuring out how to make this game something that new players are going to enjoy.
Yeah, so to that end, of the people that I've looked into, I think there are actually Probably a couple folks that and this is just me, I'm not endorsing anybody right now. I'm actually kind of looking into it, but a couple folks have kind of piqued my interest that are kind of out of the norm. One of them would be Chance Ravine, aka Wingspan TT. He's a very, very popular YouTuber, but not in the business sense. If you ever want to have see the actual fun side of Eve, go to YouTube and look up Wingspan TT. He's actually a professional marketing guy, like in real life, and just absolutely totally enthusiastic. He's been playing for about a year. He's a really, really good dude, and he's got a very fresh take on what Eve could be, or how you could sort of increase its general appeal and make it work within the things that actually have set the game apart in a positive way. So I would just offer, folks check him out. He's a pretty interesting guy. Ash Dorothi from the High Drag and Hydrostatic podcast is a pretty good dude. He's actually a bro of Hans Jagerblitzen, longtime faction warfare guy in Eve. His big thing that I think is interesting is not
Did Hans
so much.
endorse him?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, then everyone should vote for him. I mean, if Hans says it, do it. That's what we operate under.
Ash is a really good dude. He's a little nervous when he talks, so he's a little bit flighty. But the big thing that's happening in Eve right now is that they're really, really utilizing the lore to describe game mechanics back and forth, or to foreshadow what's happening in the game, and there really looks to be kind of a lot of the like an actual storyline in Eve being relaced and sort of fleshed out.
Yeah,
those
new scope videos.
Yeah, those are awesome. And he was actually, and his podcast is the one that was actually featured in that last scope video. That's that lore panel, or the expert panel they were talking about. Those were the characters of the guys that were on that lore panel on his podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting to see how that whole thing rolls out. Eve's story, the storyline with the star and whatnot. I mean, I'm interested. I'm curious where they're going with it, but I still don't like the direction of player created gates as a focus for major development. So we'll see what they do with it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. But anyway, I think because of that, now that aspect is coming to the fore. A guy like Ash is probably an interesting choice for somewhere deeper in your ballot maybe. But long story short, there's a lot of you really actually have to pay attention to what's going on if you're an Eve player and you are interested in what the CSM can do for you, which is noticeably different than what the CPM does, in my opinion. But like I said, it's an interesting crossover, and I do recommend people take a look at it. And you'll get to see there's some extremely capable folks that are out there that are looking to put their own personal time into making the game better for the community, or at least for their segment of the community, which I think is a fair statement.
So Jason,
Mm-hmm.
this is a viewpoint I just want to ask you for. I want to get it out there. When you put a toilet paper roll in the bathroom, does it go over or under? Because there's only one right way to do it.
Well, I have a bidet, so I'm not really sure how this is going to work out. Volley to you, Sarizel.
The correct answer is over. Unless you have
Whatever.
a cat. Then you can put it under.
Well, I certainly don't own a feline, although the closest I've got to that is Cat Merc, who's up in the listening room and he's falling asleep.
We've just kind of gotten used to cats sleeping in the lobby of the channel now.
Yeah, that's probably pretty true. So I guess, let's see, before we riffed onto the whole CSM thing, where were we at? It's something
That was
absolutely-
it. I mean,
Yeah, I think that was it. So
that was
I guess
my random topic, in case you were
that was
curious.
it. Ah, Jesus Christ! All right, man. So a couple
Told
things
you it was random.
we can dive. Well, actually, I was kind of planning on touching about that. That was sort of in my Eve update list of things to talk about. But
The
anyway,
toilet paper roll?
no, not so much. Although
okay.
I did link a
Alright.
great video of you at the Ice Swarm meet. Everybody in the Biomassed podcast Skype channel, please check it out.
I don't want to know.
It's awesome.
I was on video there?
Yeah, absolutely you were. So the other component of that that I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit, we've got the 1.1 update for Warlords coming out, I think in April, May, right, Kane? I think you posted that up. I'm just curious, like I when you posted that, I went back and looked at the Trello board. There's a lot of stuff that they're claiming is going to hit in April, or well, I guess April, May. I'm curious how much of that list is actually gonna come true, because there's some big ticket items in there.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of things that'll be game changers, and apologies for the dogs barking in the background. But the thing that's probably most interesting in terms of a game mechanic that could really make a big difference is simple trading, I think. And also the command points thing for PC. That's going to be the first real PC change that we're seeing roll out, is that command point stuff.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how that's going to go down, because I think we're still not really in aftershocks, but people are still trying to sort the war barging out, and however that's going to play into this, I'm very curious to see.
Yeah, the lab still continues to produce more officer gear than experimental things, and including officer suits.
Do you have to have to do a war barge level 5 to get the lab?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And what level is your lab at right now?
My lab is currently level 2 because in terms of the cost of component claiming, there's no reason to have it any higher right now.
I am at War Barge level 2, and I finally just today got to upgrade my the factory thing that makes components to level 2. I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah. So I'm kind of trying to do the no arm thing. I basically spent like I had some arm that I've had for probably 6 months.
You cheated.
Well, I did, like when it first came out, because I didn't, and that's what I was. That's like it was literally just the arm that I've had for.
I'm slow boating it
forever,
the old-fashioned way,
and that's what I've been doing for a while. I'm not even close to having level 5 war barge yet, not even remotely close.
I'm not remotely close to level 2 war barge.
Yeah, it's like holy shit. I find this to be a bit aggravating. As I look at it, and to the point where I don't even pay attention to the war barge stuff anymore. The problem that's going to happen is if I ever really try to get back into the higher end competitive side of the game, like you're going to get driven to having to max your war barge out because of the benefits it gives you. I'm really, really not interested in going down that road, though.
I really, really hope that Toddy takes the feedback based on about changing the component factory to active generation from passive generation and actually implements that, because I think that would make the whole situation with the barge way, way, way better. Because, I mean, we definitely get more end-of-match salvage now, but I don't know. The passive stuff is going to be a roadblock to actually components being a tradable thing. And with simple trading coming around the corner, I think war barge components could be potentially a huge boon in terms of players having money. They buy components and then they trade it over to other people for ISK that's been generated in the game, almost in a Plex-like way.
No, that would be pretty interesting if it was set up that way. There's a whole lot of second, third order effects you'd have to really kind of look at on that, though.
I think as long as it's the ISK generation too is going to get interesting. The command points. One of the things about the command points is the selling of clones, which will bring back wealth generation to districts, which is a huge deal for a lot of people. But I don't know. I think as long as the majority of the ISK being generated in Dust is active generation, I think even if people are buying war barge components for ore and then selling them on a secondary market or through trading, I think that's would actually be healthy for the game, because you have people who have lots of time to grind the ISK, and then you have people who don't have time to grind the ISK. So maybe they already have their war barge out at level 5. That would actually give people who want to get more ISK, they could spend even more ore and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, like I said, it'll be interesting to see if, what happens with 1.1. It would not entirely surprise me if, the infamous bullet versus, new PC drops is slid out of the 1.1. Although it's just a factor of them dealing with, the outlay of the 1.0 drop, and ultimately they're probably going to have some downtime with some of the Chinese holidays. But
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what they actually come up with.
The thing that's, I think, out of all those things on the 1.1 list that are really interesting, though, is definitely the new game modes item, too, which is supposedly the most expensive, thing that they can add, if I recall correctly. One of them, anyways.
Well, I guess there's going to be a couple of interesting potential issues too. Is we can have all sorts of new mechanics issues potentially could come up with whatever the game mode is that they go with, and the other thing is that they're also splitting the queue of how many people are queuing up for different games at a time, which can also hit. That's the issue with only having so many people playing the game.
Well, yeah. You only have 40 to 100 matches at any given time between all pub, PC, and faction warfare gameplay. That's why the meta level lockout worries me with the whole 1.2 stuff.
I really dislike the meta level lockout idea. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think it defeats the point of having gear in the first place.
To me, it seems like it would be so much easier to just say pubs are. Maybe you limit public play, and then faction warfare, it's no holds bar, and then PC is no holds bar. I mean, if you're going to do meta level stuff, if you start subdividing public play, I think you're going to run into issues.
Well, plus for me, the main reason that I, looked at the meta lockout in the first place was to improve the new player experience. But if they can actually get the academy working properly, I don't think the meta lockout's necessary.
And I'd be okay if they left the academy, maybe if they left the academy longer term, so that maybe you'd keep it, a few months, potentially something like that, and that was meta level restricted. I'd be okay with that.
It depends on how. I guess. The meta level locking, putting meta levels in for the academy would definitely make sense. Because
I've been wanting to ask this question, and I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, Kane. The meta level lockouts. We're all assuming that means you can't have over a X collective meta score for an individual loadout that's available in a game, right? That's what we think this is.
Yes. Sum of all of your fittings. So your suit has a meta level number, your modules have meta level numbers, and they all get added together to give you a total meta level for your whole suit.
Do vehicles and vehicle modules have meta levels anymore?
Yes, I think they do.
I'll be interested to see how this works out. I'm not a vehicle hater, but if what you're going to do is tell me I can't bring in I don't know, proto forge guns and proto swarms, that's going to make it real interesting against vehicles.
I would assume they'll be adding it anyways.
That's the thing. We're still the whole infamous and mysterious and elusive hotfix Echo is still actually supposedly coming soon, according to a Ritati post. At least the details, the narrative was going to be posted soon, as opposed to deployment. I don't know, but that could definitely change things up, because that's going to happen before all this meta level stuff happens, and that's a lot of changes in terms of vehicles apparently coming down the pipe.
Yeah, it's just a matter of getting productive feedback out of the player base when working with vehicles, which is extremely hard to do and time consuming.
Well, they're being done at least, and we are progressing a little bit, considering that we now got placeholder names for the new solo HAVs and how they're going to name scheme the prototypes in advance.
The thing that was so interesting to me about that was actually utilizing protofits, the website protofits. If you haven't used this website, it's a great one. I'm pretty sure it's just protofits.com, if I'm correct. Is that right, guys?
I believe so.
And putting the theoretical fits. Put the theoretical stats on that website is very innovative, because it's almost like a modicum of a test server, just the tiniest bit, where people can go in and play with fittings and see if they can do kind of crazy things. And definitely one of the other interesting things that Ritati posted, I know that has a lot of vehicle people in a kind of a herf blurf, was the potential changes to CPU and power grid mods, and them.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because before you have your CPU extenders and your power grid enhancers, and the power grid enhancers would take CPU to run, but the CPU enhancers were basically free. So what you could do is, on a lot of shield vehicles, that you would fill your low slots, which are not being used for shields, and basically push your resources extremely high. And you could fit a lot more stuff in a shield vehicle than you could in an armored vehicle, because obviously you can effectively increase your available resources. So what Ritati is doing is basically power grid extenders will still consume CPU, but it's quite a bit more, and CPU extenders will consume power grid, and again in a large amount. So if you put them together, they almost cancel each other out. So you really kind of have to decide what do you need rather than just throwing them on there because you can.
The thing I've always found interesting about it is you are sacrificing a slot for more fitting, but I think it almost makes me wonder if it would have been better at some point in Dust history to have, CPU and power grid actually not share the same rack, of low or high,
Yeah, and I don't have an issue with people spending a module slot to increase their resources. The issue is that there are so few decent low slot modules for vehicles that it's pretty much a no-brainer that you put them in there, unless you're fitting armor. But again, on a shield vehicle, if you want to really ramp your shields, your weapon up, you can just fill those with the resource enhancers because the alternatives really aren't that useful to you. So I think if you added some more low slot modules that were actually things that you would want and would have to not use in exchange for the resources, it'd be a lot more reasonable.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I guess my question is: anything else for the discussion about 1.1? Anything you guys want to touch on?
No, I know you guys probably can't answer this, but for the new game modes, should we be expecting something that's entirely new, or more of like a variation of what we have now?
I would have to say a variation with a new rule thrown in.
I would say that it's not a radical departure.
Well, pretty much. If you think about it, if they change domination where the point moves every so often, they've quote unquote made a new game mode, and it doesn't mean what I think. I would tend to agree. I don't have any expectations it's going to be some huge radical shift in anything because we're not really experiencing huge radical shifts in this game. So,
there's a lot of game modes I would like that are probably a bit above, what I would expect to see from CCP in at least the near future.
Aside from a progressive game mode like Skirmish 1.0, I don't expect us to see much more that you can do with static points like we have now. So I was just curious if they had come up with something creative or if it was just going to be a variation, which it sounds like it's going to be. But I guess it's something, so I can't complain too much.
If I had to put money on it, I would expect a rotating Dom game mode. That's something that CCP has talked about before. It's something that's popped up on Trello before. I think it could. One of the problems with domination was always once you're dug in, you're dug in, and I don't know. I think it could be it could be a very dynamic mode. Granted, yes, it's just objective-based gameplay yet again, but I do think it could be a fresh way of approaching certain problems, maybe even in PC and some other areas of the game as well.
I was just thinking, like the classic Unreal Tournament style, which was basically two objectives, and you basically both start at your home point, and you have to defend your 1 point and attack the other guy's 1 point. That's actually not a bad variation either. I
can see the complaints of redlining coming back though.
Well,
still wish the red line would burn in a fire.
The red line is an important game mechanic that can't go away.
Huh.
If technology allowed it, I would like to see it go away.
I just don't think it mechanically could go away. I think the way the game is designed, like from a strategy standpoint, I think the red line is critical.
Well, there's numerous things you could do to potentially alleviate there being an issue of red line. You could add an if-then condition, if all of your points are taken, you open up alternative spawns on like the edges or the sides of the map, or on the circle.
It would be as simple as like a CRU falling from the sky somewhere, like in a different part of the map, then it's pre-blued to you. There's 1,001 ways to overcome it. Ultimately the red line's a somewhat arbitrary thing that they overlap on the game for, in some ways, not a good reason, and also in other ways in very poorly thought out geographic sort of nonsensical ways. So
yeah, there's definitely been, as I know some people don't like the train map, the one with the little underground part to it in the center, but I don't know. I think that red line where basically one of the ground spawns is actually not in the red line, and the only red line area that you really have is kind of back where the MCC is, sort of. And
That does work pretty well, actually.
I
I'll give
only
you
have
that.
one real peeve with the train map, and that's that it seems like it's unnecessarily difficult to get from the bottom, inside, kind of inside where the train goes into, to the top of that. I wish there was like some sort of back stairwell or something. That's like the only thing that makes me sad about that map.
I would grant you that I think like along that very back wall, it would be good if there was like a ladder that went all the way to the top to the catwalks. That would be actually be not bad. That way it doesn't force you to be on the top of the structure and then jump down into it to get to that one catwalk. That just doesn't make sense. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually not bad. I mean, I think overall that's one of the better. That's a fairly open map. If you think about it, other than that one central point, like that's a pretty
But I
wide
mean,
open
I'd
map,
love
and
those
it's a good one.
catwalks in the back to just come, have the catwalk extend around to the back there, of that. I'm gonna call it a building, cave, whatever, cavern. I don't know. But you have the catwalks come around so that they join together, so it's one catwalk, and then you have a like stairwell where you can actually go in up to the catwalk and all the way up to the roof, right way in the back. That's what I want.
Yeah, I mean, by and large, I think it's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, the red line, like, it's kind of interesting because I've watched a lot of beefs about the red line over the years, as we all have. Like, I don't really care about the red line, frankly. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I think it's a very arbitrary and probably not real well thought out game mechanic sometimes. But it's what's in the game. I mean, I got it. And I used to, and when people would beef about having like, rail guns and like turrets in the red line shooting them, I'm like, so deal with it. go figure out how to kill it or not get shot by
adapt
it.
or die.
Yeah, or you get people like that beef about red line snipers and for the record, which I am not a sniper. I don't have a single SP. I've never used anything more than a militia sniper rifle, but and part of this, I freely admit, is I'm probably influenced by my day job a little bit in this, but you're goddamn right. I would like to have the sniper in the farthest, safest Overwatch position shooting at you where you can't find him and kill him. Like that makes perfect and utter logical sense to me. But somehow, like, people go absolute bananas about that shit in Dust. So I don't know. The red line doesn't matter to me.
The general problem is the inability to get that sniper. In real life, there's hundreds of ways to get to that sniper once you find out where he is.
Yeah, but it's also a hell of a lot harder to find him. I mean, that's what I'm saying is like you can still get to the guy.
These days. There's a 3-speaker technology out there that would pinpoint a sniper with the first shot.
All right, look, Iron Wolf, I'm not going to fence with you about real life shit. If you want to talk about this like after the show, I can. And I think it's probably safe to say I have more practical knowledge of the subject than probably any 7 people playing fucking Dust now. But my point is that you can still deal with redline snipers. I mean, they're not that big of a deal, frankly, and there's very, very few snipers that can ultimately sway a match, and usually it has nothing to do with shooting. It's more along the lines of what they're doing from a reconnaissance standpoint for you. Well, and even that doesn't work in PC very well.
It's, honestly,
because there's no tools for them to do it. They should have a little laser tag option.
Or the ability to spot, really, with the sniper rifle. I wouldn't mind that.
The ability to what? You cut out a little bit?
To spot? So basically,
yeah, that's what
like in the old, back in closed beta and open beta, if you looked at somebody and highlighted them, everyone could see the highlight, and that went away at some point.
Yeah, that's what Iron Wolf was saying, and I think you both guys are spot on. Just having some sort of target painter function for like the sniper rifle, that would be totally legit. And actually probably make them much more relevant, to be honest with you.
I mean, currently in Dust, though, the thing that a sniper does the most is psychologically annoy the enemy team, and then get them to waste resources hunting that said sniper down.
Yeah, no, that's probably pretty accurate. But You know, I didn't mean to get into like a red line discussion tangent. I've never really engaged on one of these. I've watched them in the forums a lot. You know, it's just, I, it, I guess part of me in the back of my mind is if you just opened up the red line as much as possible, it's just one of those things. It's like, man, this game should be meant for having more than 16 players per side. I can totally see where they were advertising what 32 on 32 originally, right?
Yes.
I mean, I could
Well,
totally
48
see
versus
that.
48. Well,
Yeah. I mean,
No,
like,
it was 24v24 was the advertised
that's what was on the
on the
website.
website. That was on the website for like years.
Ever.
we
I mean,
finally fixed that.
you know, when you get into those kind of numbers, like 24 per side, really 32 per side, you know, you could see that the maps are actually really big, and you could actually use all that space. I actually think the red line is, in a lot of ways, their way of just trying to corral us into a place where you can have content inside the match, and you don't spend 10 minutes like driving around and scanning for people to shoot. That's my opinion.
Speaking of maps, though, I just want that MCC map in more rotation, and I want it in faction warfare because
Absolutely.
it's so much fun. It's a lot of fun. I think over time, though, as people get map knowledge of it, we're going to figure out problems for it, which I think is good. We got to figure out the problems for it too, you know, in case they can be fixed, that kind of stuff. But
you know, one thing I'll tell you what. One thing I really wish they would have done is, to a degree, I think if you take over a planet in PC, I actually don't like the idea of everybody changing their shit to the cargo hub. You know, I kind of like the idea that you sort of have to deal with whatever's on the planet, and every map is in rotation.
I like that. Yes.
I mean, the reality is like you're like if you take the game story for its word, we don't have like the resources of most capsulers where you can just pick up and plop down, you know, PI structures, which is a ginormous investment in, you know, terraforming and infrastructure and workers and stuff like that. We can probably take one over and hold it, but we ain't putting a new one down. So I kind of actually like the idea that, hey, what if you take over a district and it's got Manus Peak? Guess what? You got to fucking fight on Manus Peak forever, unless you don't want that district.
No, I think the what Rotati kind of went into is that maybe it's randomized, but what I think would be the compromise between it being a fixed height map or being a random map location, including actually some pub maps that you don't normally see in PC. I think what you do is you have every time a district changes ownership, the map changes. And then the map is set. That way, the defenders can defend that map, and then later on, then it changes. Because the thing is,
yeah, but I don't want yeah, but the thing is, like, you should not be able to change.
No. That's what I'm saying. No. You don't change the whole, because everything's a cargo hub, pretty much 90% of the maps on the board.
Yeah, that's my point.
No, like the surface infrastructure in the center, I think could be randomized, and the map, even the height map itself, could be randomized. But it's randomized for each owner, like as you flip it. If it changes ownership, then it's a different location. Because I think one of the things is the defenders get a reasonable advantage from knowing what the map is going in beforehand. And I think that's reasonable for them to expect that kind of advantage of, like, this is our home territory. We know that this height map is X, you know?
Well, you know, I mean, to a degree, I actually like the idea that, like, well, here, okay, I see what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it in spirit. I think my counter proposal to having districts with fixed maps and socket structure is that, hey, I know that Onataken 4 is, you know, the MCC construction facility, because that is what is there in that district, and it's listed in the district title. And then the attacker and the defender both know that, and because you would actually know that. There's no reason that it would not be a surprise to you. And I think I don't really see a big problem with that, because I think if everything was locked to, like, this kind of district has this kind of map in it and that kind of thing, effectively it is randomized, unless all you want to do is take over only the districts with your preferred style of map, which, by the way, would be a valid tactic, but may cause you some problems in other ways. so for, like from a logistics standpoint or something like that. So I actually really like the idea of us being able to take over anything, but changing the structures in the maps. I really think we need to go away from that.
I think
just to keep it that way.
changing the structures in order to get a set benefit is fine, but the structures actually affecting the map on the field isn't necessary.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. The non-match output of your district, I think you can modify. I think that's totally fine to a degree, but I also think that something should be like some of the maps, honestly, like maybe they should be like optimized for certain types of outputs, whatever, some produce better components, some help you with producing different things in your war barge, or lowered your cost of clone packs or whatever. But I don't like the idea of the in-match part, you being able to change and control that.
Yeah, well, I think really the in terms of structures and bonuses to planets and stuff like that, I really think probably one of the better ways to go about it would be to say, this is an idea that I've been thrown around the forums, is that you actually have a fitting for each planet. So each planet has so much grid on it. Each structure takes up a certain amount of grid, right? So then if you have a really expensive grid structure on the planet, then it leaves not as much available for the other districts. And so you get bonuses based on whatever structure you put up, that kind of thing, to kind of maybe even drive conflict locally on a planet, because, okay, somebody's using up all the grid and you want to do some super awesome thing with your district in terms of to make money. So you go and attack that person, or you try to work out a diplomatic arrangement for them to change what their surface infrastructure is.
If there were that level of granular controls in a planet, and then actually that also leads you down the road of, probably if you get planetary control or something like that, like all the districts on a planet, you get like some optimized bonuses and stuff like that to that. Like I would be all for that. I think anything that makes owning the planet more granular, and with what you can do with it and how you can engage people other than attacking their district, because that's kind of the only, you can basically choose to attack or not attack somebody. But if you had that level of granular control, from the control of districts and the control of planets and things like that, I don't really see a downside to that. I will be frank with you, though. I absolutely don't think that we're anywhere close to ever seeing that. But I would love to see it. I absolutely would love to see it.
There's got to be something to add geography to the districts, and when I see district resources down the line on the backlog and stuff, I get worried that we're going to get in some kind of situation that we ended up with in EVE, where you had, very valuable resources only in certain areas of the map, that kind of thing. I think if you had a generic resource,
I agree, it should be a generic resource.
And then from that, you then can get more specific benefits out of it.
I mean, one of the things I always thought would be nice, and we could kind of add the, pull the flavor of sex status, which is already something that, we know exists and is even showed in the star map, which would be to have, the lower sex status planets have produce more resources, so that, those further out ones from high sec would be the more valuable properties.
Yeah, I could see that for sure, and like that's why I want the grid idea though. It's like you could have, maybe you have a district, maybe you have a planet like Autolith that has 24 districts, but the actual overall available grid on the planet's relatively low compared to per district. Or you could have a smaller planet that actually has a lot of grid, so each district actually has more juice for, on a per district level. I think the resource idea is good, and just you want to have that sense of, I want to control this, I want to own this district, I want to not have somebody messing with me over here doing this way. I want that kind of depth to planetary conquest, and like Jason, like you were saying, is there needs to be different ways of attacking, rather than I just want to own the stuff. Because maybe if you have the whole, like, somebody builds an infrastructure that's hurting you in terms of your production, maybe you don't attack the district to own it, you attack it to burn down the surface infrastructure that they then have to build up again.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely spot on with that. Like I said, more granular controls, or granularity is not really the thing. I think it's more depth is what we're looking for at the moment. which I think we've always wanted in PC. So, honestly, I think you're spot on with a lot of that. One thing I would like to do is kind of bridge over to another topic real quick because we are going to kind of keep the show a little short, if that's okay. If there's any saved rounds or any last pitches for our deep desires for a Sid Meier like PC game mode. Any last thoughts?
I have to agree with what the Kane's vision is with basically having conflict drivers, because Eve wanted this and it didn't work out too well when they tried to apply it, because it never went and stole the neighbor's stuff, so to say.
Well, okay. Well, the one thing I will offer on this is that I like the idea of having a common resource, but having different kinds of resources produced in either different regions or on different types of districts is kind of cool, because that's actually one of the big things that differentiates classes of wormholes. It differentiates different types of moons and structures in different parts of space in Eve, is that if you want to build like a T3 cruiser, like a Tech 3 cruiser, then you have to get stuff from a lot of different places. And some of them are relatively rare, which then drives up their price. And I think if there was some modicum of that in Dust, I think that would kind of be good. And that would also lead you down that road of like perhaps non-kinetic PvP. When I say non-kinetic, I mean, there's a way to engage corps and players without shooting them, outside of a match, which then would increase probably the level of competitiveness or the engagement in match whilst you're shooting people in the face, if you will. So that's just a thought. I mean, I really do think they probably could come up with some ways to do that. I'm honestly not sure that they're going to be able to put the resources against that kind of development, though.
I guess the only final thought I have on that vein is I really, really wish they would implement a function, maybe with this command point thing, to transfer ownership of a district from one corp to another.
Yep, that would be great if you could sell it, like just outright sell it. That'd be awesome. I totally agree with that. All right, so we're going to bridge over to our last topic of the night, and this is actually kind of a. I'm going to we're going to do something a little bit new here, and I'm literally taking a page from one of the other. There's another podcast out there. It's an Eve podcast I've mentioned earlier called the Hydrostatic Podcast. So they have a lore segment, and this is probably not going to be something that we're going to do every week by any stretch of the imagination, but there's some cool things going on in Eve that are somewhat connected to Dust that I kind of wanted to talk about very briefly. So if you guys remember, when you watched the original Dust intro, which is also I think was a FanFest trailer, like on the PS3. One of the first things it shows is like these guys going into a kind of an alien archaeology location. I think it's like a sleeper structure. Actually, a sleeper is a class of human being, or like a subcategory of human beings in the New Eden world. And long story short, a lot of the Dust implants originally came from sleepers. They were actually pieces of implants that were in other, essentially humans that were in stasis. They ripped them out and they put them in Dust soldiers, or that's how they created the Dust soldier, with sort of the Wi-Fi like, consciousness transfer. Now that's since in the lore that's since changed a little bit, where basically those implants are produced and they're much more stable than the ones that were actually removed from somebody else's grape and put in yours. And the reason I bring this up is that the Jove and the sleepers, and they're not synonymous. They're not synonymous. They're not the same, but they are much more similar in their race or their racial background. They're actually becoming more prevalent in Eve now, and it's kind of interesting. So what they did, they actually have a faction now called the Drifters that came out in the recent update in Eve, and they're effectively what you would see if you were seeing a sleeper or a Jovian. White-skinned, black scleras for the eyes, like the whites of their eyes are actually black, and heavily augmented. They look kind of, if you imagine like what Pinhead looked like in the old...
Yes.
They look
Cenobites. They look
Yeah,
like Cenobites. They
look
really do.
kind of like the Cenobites, except that no gore or like weird shit pounded into their head. And Jadek Minheim actually made an interesting comment. He's like, I wonder if that's what we look like under our drop suits, because when you look at them, it kind of actually looks sort of like probably like a Galente, or correction, a Caldari drop suit without a helmet. But it's kind of interesting when you look at it. So there's a lot of neat things that's happening, and it ties back because one of the interesting things I find out from my buddies in EVE that are really big lore nuts, a lot of the things that they know about the Jove and the Sleepers came from Templar 1, which was the actual novel, the EVE novel that talked a lot about Dust. It was actually a Dust book, if you will. And a lot of the lore that came out of originally when Dust was coming out, that's how they learned a lot of the things about the Jove and the Sleepers. These guys are now coming to the fore in EVE. They're an NPC in K-Space, or known space now, and they've got this thing called a Drifter battleship. Holy shit. It's pretty incredible. It basically has a doomsday device on it, so when you shoot at it and you aggress it, one, they're very smart and they will track you down and find you. But these things one-shot carriers. Now, if you're not an EVE player, that may not mean much to you, but if you're an EVE player, that should mean a lot. That's literally like a single burst of your weapon, of the weapon system on the ship. There's like 80k damage, like 80,000 damage per shot for an alpha. It's just insane. And I've actually gotten to see one of these up close this weekend. It was just incredible watching it blaze away at these poor fools that were trying to kill it. So I just wanted to bring that up, that there's some neat things going out there from a lore standpoint in EVE that sort of shed some light on, or not really shed light on, but actually tie back into what we saw a couple of years ago with the lore in Dust and how that was tying in. So that was sort of my nerdgasm for the evening that I just wanted to pitch out, and I was kind of curious if you guys have been paying attention to any of that here on the EVE side lately.
I keep an eye.
Well, it is fairly interesting. You do bring up a good point. Our combat clones are generic, and they are copies of each other. I mean, if you took all our helmets off, we all look the same, mostly to each other, because the clones are built for efficiency in combat, not looks, like the Capsuleers could afford to do.
Yeah, I figured. I kind of figured that there was some kind of like a basic, like Mimitar racial like chassis, or like clone chassis, if you will, that they were using. It's like every race would have like a stock Caldari chassis, a stock Mimitar chassis, stock Amar, and all that kind of good stuff. So
I think it's even more generic than that. It's actually just generic male clone, generic female combat clone.
Well, my assumption
for the longest time we only had generic male.
Yeah.
My assumption is that wherever the clone was made would use like racial genetic stocks. That it's probably an assumption, but it was a leap.
Most likely the manufacturing's been uniformed between all the clones, so they may not be using the same genetic stock. They're just using whatever stock's best for whatever combat it is.
Yeah.
Because aside from having good genes, our clones are heavily augmented as well.
That's true. But like I said, I thought it was kind of interesting. And if you look, or if you're interested in all and you're listening to the podcast, just literally type in Drifter or Jovian character model, and you'll get to see them. They're actually pretty neat. And I also suspect that in the next year or two, we might actually see them as playable, because one of the things they talked about in EVE was a quote unquote hard mode where you basically bought a clone that had a stock set of SP in it, and you couldn't learn anymore. It had what it had. Like you could buy a 20 million SP clone, and it's got what it's got in it, and that's all it's got, and it goes until you kill it, and then you never get it again unless you buy it. I could actually see some kind of Jove-like piece that was sort of like that, where you had like a sleeper clone or whatever the heck, and he was faking like he's a capsuleer, and you pay X amount of ISK for a 20 million SP tune that can do certain things. So I don't know, might be interesting to see how it works out.
Well, it would give the Joves a third bloodline of a race, but so far they have no association with the current Jovian Empire, who has entirely different visual aesthetics in terms of both ships and people.
Well, the people are pretty close. Like the few pictures of Jove that we do have, they're actually pretty similar. Now the interesting thing about that, when you look at the description of the drifters, it actually describes them as coming from the Jove. I mean, they are a subsect of the Jove. And one thing that, again, before going into a ridiculous amount of Eve lore, the short answer on this is that the Jove are a very fractured group because we never see them. If you're an Eve player, you're one of the 4 basic human racial types when you play. The Jove were the 5th one, and there are actually a lot of sub-factions within the Jove that, unless you go really, really deep into like Eve Chronicles and stuff that a lot of people don't know about. They are actually from the Jove. So it would be interesting to see how this kind of all works out in the future. And like I said, for those of you that don't know, if all you've seen is dust on the PS3, which is totally legit, the actual fictional world of New Eden is incredibly deep. I mean, there's a lot of stuff into it, like in an expanded universe type of way. And if you really kind of like science fiction style, like world building, it's a really, really neat sort of thing to get into, and I highly encourage you to check it out. With that, I will probably start to call this episode to a close. I'd like to go ahead and breach into shout outs, but I want to give everybody a shot. Any kind of thing you want to put out there for about a 1-minute topic or a brief statement or whatever. If we can do that, I would appreciate it. And then when you get done, do your shout out. So it's kind of a remix version of the shout outs, but if it's your platform, if you want to throw anything out there before we close this up. So we're going to lead off with Iron Wolf Saber. If you got anything on your mind, let it go, and then give us some shout outs, brother.
I'd like to give a shout out to Gaijin for eating up all my attention this week on their free-to-play game War Thunder. And what I'm playing War Thunder for is basically how they're doing their vehicle gameplay for reference to Dusk gameplay. And I am so far liking how they do tank versus tank combat. The concept of having parts of the vehicle get disabled if they get hit in a certain way and direction makes them an easier target over time. But overall, it will not exactly fit Dust models entirely. But in the idea that we could potentially should be able to disable an HAV with like a flux grenade or something, or maybe the proximity mines had a slowing effect, would help out a lot of the AV issues.
I would love if we could ever get to like having like a stasis web of fire in Dust that I could use on vehicles or drop suits. I actually put a lot of thought into that. A lot of people thought you could use it like as a grenade. I would actually rather it be something you mounted on a lav, like a small turret. And that would give lavs a really neat counter to a lot of vehicle play.
Tackler lavs, yay!
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. If you think about it, that works just like it does in Eve, like small, fast, low HP ships that their sole job is to go out there and tackle big, expensive things until folks with AV or big weapons can show up and smoke it. I think that'd be an absolutely blast way to play. Okay, so I appreciate that, Iron Wolf. Any shout outs, man?
No, I already gave a shout out to Gaijin.
Totally sorry about that. Kane Spero, you're up, brother.
Just a shout out to the Dust community for being crazy and continuing to play in this game, and also a shout out to the Negative Feedback Alliance because they're doing some crazy stuff right now.
Awesome. Okay. Pokey?
Kind of slow weeks, no topics, but shout out to people in OSG for putting up with my incredibly high 300% tax rate.
Sounds good. Okay, and we've got a twofer. We're going to get a intro and a shout out all in the same go round. SMB?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. This is SirManBoy, director over at Molan Labe, member of CPM1. Thanks for letting me speak, Jay. I just want to give a quick shout out. Molan Labe suffered a pretty big loss this week. One of our longtime members, who will always be a friend to us, who's a personal friend to me. And I just want to give him a shout out because we're going to miss him dearly. Thor Odinson 42 just recently left Molon Labe, and we just want to wish him the best, happy trails, and just let him know that despite the fact that he left, we're all thinking about him, and we wish him well.
Awesome, man. Is he? I'm honestly not trying to pick here, but is he leaving Molon Labe or leaving the game?
He left Molon Labe. He went to somewhere in negative feedback, I believe. I'm not even totally clear on all the details, but he's been with us for like 2 years. He's one of our longtime directors, and he was looking for a different experience apparently. So we're just gonna miss him, and we just want him to know that we all got nothing but love for the guy. So
yeah. He's a good dude. So yeah, I wish him well in whatever his endeavors are, and that is something that happens when you play these games a lot of times. Is you'll honestly get you'll get people that want to just have different game experiences over time, and it happens. But yeah, absolutely, man, no problem, and I'm certainly glad to see that Thor's not leaving the game, and we're going to still see him, blasting around in the matches. So,
absolutely, thanks a lot, Jay.
Yeah, no problem, brother. Soraya?
Yeah, I'm going to give my shout out to Jadek Manaheim and his new PS3 theme you can download this week. If you've seen that.
I haven't. Where can I find it?
Haven't seen that one yet.
He's tweeted about it. It is a Lord Rattati theme for your PS3.
Oh, jeez. I
did see that. That was actually pretty funny, actually. Okay. Soraya, is anything else, man?
No, that's all I got for today.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep this one fairly tight. I don't really have a whole lot of shout-outs right now. I'll probably save those for another time, and I do appreciate everybody coming on. I appreciate the fact that we're getting together to do a podcast about a game that probably like a relative handful of people play. I say that relative across the gaming world. But it's pretty cool. It's probably indicative of the style of community and the style of player that's attracted long term to these kind of games. So, on that note, I hope to see you guys all in match, or at least as one of my favorite Dust Media folks says, in a reticle near you. Shout out to Booker. On that note, we're going to close episode 42. And again, we appreciate your patronage, and please keep the comments coming. Twitter, email, biomassed.net, in-game, whatever. Let us know what you want to talk about. Let us know what you think. And again, we appreciate you guys listening and downloading us.